Hi everyone, good morning. Our shop is closed due to some riots in the city or whatever the problem is there. Don't know what they're rioting about again. I'm going to continue with the frame. It stood overnight and it's nice and dry now. So I'm just taking a very fine steel wool. And the reason why I'm taking the steel wool because there's so many profiles. The steel wool actually conforms to the profile very nicely. One thing to look for when using steel wool is when you're done, you must really clean it very properly, especially when you're working with a water-based paint or a varnish. What I do usually once I'm done is I take a clean paintbrush and air and I will wipe it and clean it right around. So for now I'm just gonna give it a quick fleck with the steel wool right around everywhere just to get rid of that little bit of a raised grain. Now I'll give it the final coat of varnish. There we are guys, I've sanded it with the steel wool, not much left of it. This is the 0000 steel wool, very fine. Then I cleaned it with a brush and some air to make sure there's nothing left. And then I gave it a coat of the poly varnish. I'm going for a satin finish, so I'll see what it ends up like when it's dry. I might just scuff it up with some steel wool again before giving it some oil. But now it's the waiting game. We're going to wait for it to dry and see what the finish looks like. So I moved the big frame out of the way, put it down to one side to dry on its time. While that's drying, I went and quickly put some beeswax and mineral oil mix on this. I'm going to leave it a few hours until late afternoon and give it a buff with some soft cloth and show you how nice beeswax can polish up. I think the frame is touch dry enough now for me to make some dust here in the workshop, so I'm going to continue turning some spindles for the coat rack now. More on that a bit later. So the way I mark my centers is with a simple corner to corner jig that I think everybody should have. And then I just punch the center hole like that. And then the same on the other side. And that's the centers. So I turned another one of the short ones, so we've got now 4 of them. Now I'm going to concentrate on the thicker ones. I'm going to divide this piece into 2 and then turn 2 of the thicker top ones, and I've got another blank like this that I'm going to turn another 2 of. Let's see how we get this one out. So that's the design I came up with. So it's going to be basically from there to the end is one spindle, and then this side is the other spindle, ending up at 19 mil again because that's the Forsnibbit size. And let me turn another 2 and see if I can manage it. And then of course guys, keep your chisel sharp. She keeps her edge quite long, but it doesn't mean that you can keep on turning. Eventually you'll have to sharpen, and it just works better. And once you're sharp again, you'll feel the difference immediately. that's the small spindles done, and then the larger 4 spindles, they are done now. Another 4 spindles to go, then we're done with the spindles for the coat rack. What I've decided to do in the meanwhile, on the big picture frame, I want to put a little plaque with the lady that built the 9,000 piece puzzle, her signature on it, and then the name of the puzzle, like they would usually do on a piece of art. So I took a piece of wood, off cut, just cut the corners out with a scroll saw, and then on the bobbin sander just made them nice and round, and then on the router table with a little cove bit, I just gave it a bit of a detail around the corner. I'm gonna laser now, and then I'll show you. Good morning, guys. So yesterday after I finished with the turning work on the little spindles, Conrad came and we built the frames that we promised the lady in Bethlehem. It's a very basic frame made out of pine, and just take 8 A4 pictures. Just did an OG on the outside and a rebate on the inside, or a cove cut on the inside with a router. Half lap the centers and then pocket hold the inside to the outside frame. I'm just going to do some finishing on them, then I'm going to stain them with mahogany stain and varnish them quickly. Then they will be done. Then we will continue with the last 4 spindles on the coat rack. Enjoy. So I'm busy with the last set of spindles now for the coat rack. And I'm making basically one that looks like that. They are the longest of the bunch. And I'm just quickly rounding up my last blank. So let's finish. So I quickly transferred my marks. This is going to be my center. 1 spindle and 1 spindle. I'm just going to make 2 rounds. Take it from there. Chatter there. Here Kunrad arrived and we started working on the wedding boxes. We took some kiart planks which was about 32 millimeters thick. We just split it in half on the bandsaw, then put it through the planer just in order to save wood and lessen the wastage. Here we take the wood we just split on the bandsaw and planed to a thickness of 12 millimeters. We're just gluing up some bigger parts for the back parts or the back pieces of the little wedding boxes. We managed to get some nice book matches out of this, and in the end of the video I'll show you some pictures of it. Hi and welcome to the little wood shop again. Nice and cold day today. What I'm busy with now, just quickly for a customer, cutting up some yellow tongue wood into little blocks. He does wood carving. So what he wants is 40 millimeters by 40 millimeters by 60 millimeters. So I'm just going to chop up the piece of yellow tongue for him. Then we'll continue with Bux's box. He came to me and he wants a box that they put .303 bullets in for hunting rifles. So I just build him the box and then he will continue and do the rest. I'll show you now what we've done there. Let's just finish this first. The little blocks cut up and done for the customer. I'll give it to him next week. So back to Bux's boxing. Is all I've done is little finger joints, 12 millimeter wide stock that I've cut. Put them together, cut a little rebate and glue in the bottom. The bottom is floating. Not that it's going to stretch or anything because it's masonite. So, but just for the looks of it. What I decided to make, just to give it a little bit more detail, is to create a pillow top. Well, I call it a pillow top, I'm not sure what I call it. And that is going to sink in halfway in the wood, and just the chamfer is going to stick out on top. Just to give it a little bit more detail. So what I'm going to do now is going to put little blocks of wood on the inside, give it a place to stop at, glue it in, and then I'll cut the lid off. Then we will be done. Bux will do the finishing himself, and we'll continue then probably staining the big picture frames, and then I also want to do some work on the coat rack still. Let's see how far we get. So while I'm waiting for the glue on the box to dry on the lid, I so far put all of them, of the spindles, in the lathe and made sure that there where I want them to stop at the exact length, they will end up on the size of the hole I'm going to drill, for example. So that each one of them, when I put them or glue them in the post, the lines will all end up, and that the lengths will end up the same. They're all now done, all the spindles are now done. I can now cut them off and get them to find a length. I've sanded while I was on the lathe, sanded all of them to 220 grit. The rest of the sanding will be done by hand once this is all complete. So I took my Forstner bit, drilled a hole in a piece of scrap, and then test fitted every one so that I end up on my line. So guys, that's the 3 spindles done, or the 3 sets of spindles on the coat rack. What I concentrated on was not having the mark of the drive center or the live center on the ends of any of them, and luckily I managed to get that done. As you can see, they're from short to long. So the short one will be in the bottom about hip height. That's where they hang the umbrellas or the handbags. The next one then will be just above eye height, where they will hang the coats. And then the top one will hang at a bit of an angle for the hats. I managed to get all of them on the desirable length, the same size, just by some sanding. There's lots of hand sanding left now, some finishing sanding to do. But I wasn't looking forward to this, and I'm very glad it's now done and finished, and I'm quite happy with the results I ended up with. So now I'm going to take the 2 big posts, put them back on the lathe and start finishing them off, getting them to final size, and then sanding them so that we can start assembling. What I've decided to do on the main bottom piece is I don't like the big square part here, and Koenraad suggested we break the corners to just above this, just to leave 2 flat spaces or 4 flat spaces for the legs that's going to go to the rings. So I'm going to break these corners, just make them round, get it a little bit smaller. I'm going to turn a little ball on the end after I sand it, and then on this end I just want to reduce it by 2 millimeters to conform to the size of the part that goes on top of this one. So it's just about just a little bit too big to my liking, so I'm just going to take it down just a little bit on this end. But the main part is breaking the corners of this without ruining it. Let's see. So that's what I end up with, and this is where I'm going to stop with it for now. What I've done is I turned the little ring on there. That will be the end of it. Broke the corners just to take the bulk of this away, because nowhere in this thing there's going to be any sharp corners. And then I reduced the end of this by about, in the end, about 3 millimeters I took away. I sanded it now to a 220, and I'm done with it for now. I'm going to now put the other piece, the second part, in, sand that, and get it this far. So guys, my plan for this coat rack, just to show you what my idea is, from the end there on the 900 millimeter mark, I'm going to put the first set of spindles, which is about hip height, which will be for the umbrellas and the ties in this case. Then at the 1.6 meter mark, I'll put the straight spindles for the coats. And then at 1.75, I'm going to put the spindles for the hats. So for me to do now is I want to cut this piece off now at 1.9 and turn it and see what we end up with. So that's what I ended up with. I'm happy with the end of the design. The turning work is now done on this. I'm now going to continue and finish Bix's little box quickly. I'm tired of turning. So let's see, tomorrow, maybe the day after, I'll start with the leg for this. So the method I use to cut the lid off of the box is I set the height of my blade to the width of the wood, or the thickness of the wood, the stock. Then I set the blade to the fence, the distance I want to cut it on 3 sides, and then I've cut a little spacer that's the exact width of the curve of my blade. So I'm going to cut 3 sides, insert the spacer, clamp it, and then cut the final Let me show you. So by doing that, we get an exact grain match and a nice straight line right around. So guys, on the day off, I quickly finished the big frame, hang that. As you can see, it came up very nice, as well as the little breadboards. We polished them. Here's a picture to show you. Came out nice. So guys, what kept us busy this week? As you can see in front of me, this is what we've accomplished for the week. Me and Koenraad finished the 2 picture frames. They take each 8 A4 pictures. I've stained the other one I still need to stain. I'll do that either tomorrow or the week after. They came out quite nice. Cheap pine that we used the dado stack again, and the router table, we used a lot on that. Then I built for Bucks a little box. I showed you how I cut the lid off, and I showed you the little pillow top. That's what I call it. I don't know what other people call it. That is done. Bucks will now finish it, sand it and varnish it, and put the inserts inside for the bullets. Then on the coat rack, I finished all the little spindles, the 12 spindles, and I did also the top of the coat rack. I finished, as you've seen in the video. I'm quite happy with the outcome, and I think it's going to be a very, very nice coat rack. Then me and Koenraad, we chopped up all the pieces of wood for the little boxes for the weddings. It's simple little boxes, 150 millimeters deep and as big as an A4. And it gets a glass front with a bride and groom's names on, and a little slot on top where they can put the envelopes in. We're making 10 of them, and there you've seen us use the bandsaw to rip the stock thinner or into 2 pieces. By doing that, we saved a bunch of wood, a load of wood. Instead of making 3 boxes out of 1 piece of wood, we made 6 boxes, and we still got some leftovers out of the same plank. So the bandsaw really stood out for this week. It came to its own. It's done well. And that's still the old blade that I actually bought it with. It's not even a new blade that I used. As you've seen, I don't have a fence for the bandsaw. I just clamped a block of wood as a fence, and it worked a charm. So by doing that, we saved a lot of wood. We then book matched some parts for the back of the boxes. They came out quite nicely. And so you would have seen us use there as well the magnetic feather boards. They are very handy, and it's always that third hand you need sometimes. They work a charm. These magnets are strong, and it really keeps your fingers away from the blade. Really something you can invest in. They are worth it, if you can still find them. Then something else you saw me use that was very, very handy, and I use not often enough. That's the gripper, and it's basically a push block. I use it on my table saw as well as on my router table. It's versatile, it's handy, but at the moment it's quite expensive. So I look out for specials. Every now and then they come on special somewhere, and that's the time when you must buy it. Really something to invest in. I like my push sticks. I use lots of different push sticks, and I chop them up and I cut them up and I get new ones and I cut them out of wood. I don't like the long push sticks. I like the push sticks that actually presses down on the wood on top. Just feels a bit safer for me, and definitely invest in push sticks. So guys, I'm done for the week. I'm quite tired. I think we've accomplished enough for this week. I'm now going to light the barbecue, get something to drink. We'll see you next week. Enjoy.